the covenant. I was told that I was expected at the meeting place. The angels seemed anxious for me to get there. There was an excitement that was vibrating all over my body. I noticed that the people around me were as excited about it as I was, way down deep inside. It was an awesome feeling. I wondered what I was going to see there. Then Jesus was there again, and he said to the angels, "Take him by way of the living ark." And as fast as the blink of an eye, we were there. I found myself standing in front of a raised platform with an exact duplicate of the original Ark of the Covenant. Another living statue of Christ was suspended above the ark, with his precious blood dripping down on the area around the ark. Nothing else needed to be said. I was weeping with gratitude, and thousands of others were doing the same. It was a living memorial to the love of God. The meeting place. From my 7th birthday on, my life has been a series of experiences with God. I will never really know why God chose me, for I am the most ordinary man you have ever seen. It was simply the will of God for my life. I have met men and women of God who have had similar experiences, and they didn't understand why they were chosen either. God alone knows. On earth, I have experienced a very powerful encounter with God in which I was caught away to heaven, where I received supernatural peace. That experience of peace was about to be repeated. Yet first, I was taken to a wooded area, which was some distance from the city of God. It was in the beautiful countryside, about a mile from any houses. All along the street where we walked through this wooded area, hundreds of people were having joyful reunion parties. There were tears of joy flowing from every eye. I noticed that some of the people were stopping, looking toward me and saying, "There is Brother Richard." I had the feeling that we had met, perhaps in a revival meeting somewhere. So I waved to them and said, "God bless you." A little boy of about 6 years old ran up to me and hugged me. He said, "Do you remember me?" I didn't remember at first, but then it came to me. God had suddenly put it in my mind. The angels smiled, and the angel who did the talking said, "The boy was a crippled child who could walk after prayer." "Yes," I said, "I remember now." The boy said, "I just got here. Jesus came and got me just now. See, I am not sick anymore." People began to shout, "Glory!" and it made me think of the excitement on earth when a revival is about to break out. "I will see you later," the boy said as he ran off toward a group of children who were playing nearby. I was taken to an amphitheater. Inside there were seats along one side. Then up to the ceiling, it was like a movie theater. Where the stage would have been, there was a window that reached from the floor clear up to the ceiling, and from one side of the building to the other. You could look out over all of heaven. It was breathtaking. Everyone sat in complete silent adoration of God while waiting for someone to speak to them. I was told to be silent, as none may speak there. To behold the beauty of heaven seemed to be the purpose of all who were sitting there. I was told that this is the meeting place. This is where all the cares that people had on earth are cleansed away. Everyone leaves there having had his or her first encounter with the cleansing of heaven's glory. Then I was aware of why I had been brought here before. When it had happened earlier while I was still on earth, I had been in a war with the evil one. Here I had felt a peace and quietness that had made the problem I'd been facing just melt away. I fell on my face, and my spirit within me cried, "Holy, holy, holy." It was joy unspeakable and full of glory. First book of Peter, chapter 1, verse 8. 12. The city of God. Glorious things are said of you, O city of God. Psalm 87, verse 3. I had been walking on the pathway up to this point, though I had seen other people floating. Now something really different happened to me. I myself went up. I was going up through what looked like clouds, but they were actually groups of people. I could see the entire city. The higher I got, the more of heaven I could see, and it was a busy, busy place. In the distance, I could see the throne of God. Mountains with snow and terraced parks. There were mountains that had to be 50,000 feet tall. They had snow that never melted, even though the temperature was always just right. I was taken to the base of a mountain. The mountains were covered with terraced parks. I noticed what I was told were conveyances. These conveyances floated like boats in the sky. They were made of carved wood and metal. People sat in them and talked with each other as they floated around. In them, angels minister blessings to the people traveling together. The sea of God's glory. I was taken to the ocean, the sea of God's glory. It was crystal clear and seemed to have no bottom in places. There were what seemed like millions of people in the water and under the water. As I said before, no one could drown, and people were playing under the water. One man had built a castle out of rocks on the bottom of the ocean. In heaven, there are conveyances on the oceans, the seas, and the 4 major rivers, just as there are in the air. They are like boats in the water. Some are very large. Some are hand-carved with biblical sayings on them. Some are guided by angels. There are also land conveyances which travel on golden roads. They seem to exist so that people can sit and enjoy each other's companionship. It was as if these vehicles were the pastime building projects of someone who enjoyed making conveyances. Heaven's capital city. From up in the air, I could see the city of God. I had seen other cities in heaven. For example, I had been shown an oasis that is a city on a peninsula extending out into the ocean. Yet the city of God appeared to be heaven's capital city. It was built around the throne and contained what looked like beautiful apartment buildings. I saw a waterfall coming off of one building. There were villages in the countryside surrounding the city of God. They appeared to be hundreds of miles from the outskirts of the city. These villages were of many different styles, just as there are around the world today. But all were clean and beautiful, with flowing fountains everywhere. I saw buildings suspended in the air thousands of feet above the ground. This is when I floated high in the air and heard the villages singing their songs in perfect harmony. Layers of heaven. It seemed as though heaven was layered. There was a layer with an atmosphere and thousands of feet of air, and then there was another layer with an atmosphere and thousands of feet of air. I don't know how big it was. I was taken up to an altitude of what seemed like 30 to 40,000 feet, and yet it was just a skip in the air. In heaven, you can travel anywhere in moments of time. You can take a leisurely stroll to the layers just by walking through the air. Jesus at the auditorium. Wherever I went, angels and people were around. Sometimes just a few, sometimes large groups. They were standing around talking with great joy and worshiping. At times they were laughing with hilarious joy, evidently over a loved one coming home or a promise that had come to pass. And they were always talking about Jesus. I can still see him going here and there among the people. There was an auditorium that was an announcement center. The Lord himself was on stage there. He was with me, But also I could look down and see him as he was with groups of people walking through the air. In heaven, Jesus is omnipresent, and instantly, at the right moment, he was on the stage of that auditorium, which seemed to have seated 10 million people. I looked, and he was there, always and right now. The stage was beautiful. There was a throne on it, and I believe that it was where Jesus was sitting before he suddenly stood. There was no pulpit, but there was an area that was both gold and silver and had precious jewels. There was a fragrance, an aroma that was indescribable and beyond measure, the fragrance of God himself. The auditorium was open to the sky. In addition to the stage, there were bleachers and beautiful hand-carved seats that were unbelievably comfortable to sit in. Anything you sit on in heaven is comfortable forever. Again, the Lord suddenly was there on the stage of gold, ivory, silver, and a material I didn't recognize. I was given the understanding that there are other theaters throughout heaven where announcements are made, but this was the theater where Jesus announced that he was going to be born of a virgin. Someplace in heaven there is a reenactment of the manger scene and the virgin birth to the glory of God, an eternal nativity that declares the miracle, God became man. Someplace in heaven you can feel and hear the throbbing heart of God, loving, yearning, churning. You can feel his deep, loving compassion. He will do everything in his word that he has promised. The sacrifice of his Son indicates that he was and is willing to do everything to redeem us.